I'm Don Boozer, head of the Ohio Center for the Book, an affiliate of the Library of Congress based at Cleveland Public Library. Our mission is to promote books, reading, libraries, and literacy in Ohio. And I'm here with Douglas Brinkley, professor of history at Rice University, CNN presidential historian, and author of numerous books, articles, and essays. And we'll be talking about Professor Brinkley's American Moonshot, John F. Kennedy, and the Great Space Race. Welcome, Professor Brinkley.
Oh, thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. Before we delve into your book, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your connection to Ohio. You were born in Atlanta. What brought your family to Perrysburg, Ohio?
Well, my father worked for a company called Owens, Illinois, which is headquartered in Toledo and is now headquartered in Perrysburg, Ohio. So we moved from Atlanta when I was very young, moved to Perrysburg, and my mom became the high school English teacher for Perrysburg High School. Actually was head of the English department at the high school. And we moved into that incredible town of Perrysburg on the Maumee River, where it was very idyllic childhood. I got to ride my bicycle everywhere. We go, all along the Maumee River fishing. We were able to just have a really great time when I was young. And I think the fact that Perrysburg is a historical town, our main statue and towns of Oliver Hazard Perry. And then of course we'd go out to Fort Meigs and I would read all these historic markers. I used to be fascinated that the Underground Railroad had come up into Maumee, or that Theodore Dreiser, a great novelist, had lived in the area for a while. I then went on my own to go see the home of Sherwood Anderson, who wrote Winesburg, Ohio, the novel, and Clyde, Ohio. So it's my home place, and it connects a lot to the book American Moonshot, John F. Kennedy and the Great Space Race, because I was in Perrysburg as a boy when Neil Armstrong famously went to the moon and said that line, it's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. And I swelled with local pride because I knew Armstrong had grown up in Wapakoneta, Ohio, not that far away.
That's actually leads right into my next question. I was going to, how did growing up near Neil Armstrong's hometown influence your view of space exploration?
It was a big deal for me. There used to be these things called Major Matt Mason that I don't think anybody will hardly remember, but I used to do a moonscape in my house and then set up how it would be with astronaut rovers and lunar modules and the like. And so I then started collecting plates and glasses, pins, anything to do with the Apollo program. It also, John Glenn had become an early hero of mine, being from Ohio. And when he ran for president in 1984, I was just all about John Glenn becoming president, even as late as John Kerry, when he got the Democratic nomination in 2004, I was hoping he'd pick Glenn as his vice presidential mate. And so I fell into the lure of NASA. I wasn't alone. They did a great job of reaching out to young people through talking television programs, people like Walter Cronkite. I then read Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury books. And so I was under the spell of the idea of going to the moon and Mars.
That's great. Sounds like you had it all planned out with your moonscape and all that sort of thing.
I did. Drinking Tang, which had nothing to do with it, but they advertised like it did. And, but it was that I was so proud when they built a museum for Armstrong in Wapakoneta. And I just went and brought my kids there just a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's great. So I know that writing a book takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment. So what drew you to actually write this book? What made you want to write about this particular topic?
Well, I'm a professor of history at Rice University, which is in Houston. And in fact, the whole LBJ Manned Space Center in Houston, it used to be owned by Rice University. And so our archive at my library at Rice is filled with NASA archives and documents. And in addition, just a short drive from my campus were all the oral histories of NASA. They all are deposited then at the University of Houston at Clear Lake City, which is right at NASA. So meaning right in my own backyard, I had a trove of primary source material. Secondly, where my office is situated at Rice, I'm right by the football stadium, and that's where John F. Kennedy famously came on September 12th of 1962, and laid down the most amazing speech about science and progress and space exploration, when he said, "We choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard." And our campus is very proud of that fact, that really that occurred there. And so it made sense for me, between the Ohio connection, Rice, having NASA in my backyard, that I would do this. And then in my mind was the 50th anniversary was going to be coming up, of 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. And then the fact that I actually got to do the official oral history interview of Neil Armstrong for NASA. And
Oh, that's right. I remember reading about that in the book. Yes.
Yeah, and so then that was like, wow, I've got the Armstrong interview and all these other things. So I went for it. My publisher, HarperCollins, agreed that it was a good idea, and hence you have American Moonshot.
That's great. I had a question too about the fact that you have you released a young readers edition too. Why did you feel it was important to release specifically an edition for young readers?
Thanks for asking that question. I deeply regret I didn't do it with my other books. I did a book on Theodore Roosevelt and conservation. And when I do book signings, people say, you should do one for young adults. It'd be so good for Kid Kent isn't going to read 900 pages on TR. But if you did one for young adults, it'd be amazing, because we teach them about land stewardship and proper ways to fish or hunt or live in the outdoor world or be an environmentalist. And so I decided to give it a whirl with this one, and I did. Because I don't know how much juice I have left in my tank in life, but in future books, I hope to be able to do a young readers edition with them. And my only regret is that I didn't do them with some of my previous books.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I was interested to compare the adult version, and the young readers version between those two. And I think you did a great job trying to, pare it down to the essential information. I think they did a great job.
Hard. It was a very hard challenge, but it was worth it in the end, because I love signing it. When I was, pre 2020, when things started, our national train went off the tracks. But in 2019, I was doing book signings, so I love signing them for young people. It makes me excited that they may read that and get it interested, not just in space exploration, but engineering or perhaps going,
and even history too.
History, all of it. It just love.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher at heart. I mentioned my mother was a teacher, and I'm a teacher, and I realize I can get to young people through a different kind of book.
Yeah. And so I think you talk a little bit about it in the book. What are your memories of that actual first landing on the moon?
Oh man, I have to, as I'm getting older now, I realize it may be the most seminal public moment of my life, because nothing's compared to it to me. I was so geared up for it, and the excitement, it was in the wee hours, and my mom let me stay up late, and I would switch my sleeping habits. And then I created like a tent with the TV, pulling the cord so I could sit outside and maybe see the stars while I was watching it. And it just meant everything to me at that point. There was no moment. I mean, I think it defined my childhood. I was the right age. I mean, when you're 8.5, I was when he went to the moon, and I had just got my first sea legs about history and things, and I knew this was an epic thing, and the media was drumbeating it, and so it was stands out as a childhood memory to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm curious too, do you think there was anything specifically American about that endeavor with John F. Kennedy? Anything that sort of, that it almost had to happen in the United States?
It was all American. That only the United States could have done that in that era, because during what we won World War II is because of our great industrial and engineering capacity that I've written about within battles at D-Day or Iwo Jima and other places during the war. But really, we won it in the homeland at our factory system. We won it in places like Norfolk shipyards or San Diego. We won it in the auto factories that made an airplane, Willow Run up in Detroit. We won it in cities like, Cincinnati or Cleveland. The point is that we had really had the infrastructure of how to do big projects well during World War II. And we became very enamored with science in the 1950s and 60s. In 1960, scientists were picked as Time Magazine's Persons of the Year. Our country believed that science would help us with all of our problems, and they were also referees of issues. It doesn't exist anymore. Today we talk about climate change. Well, people, which scientists do you believe? Talking about medicine, which scientists do you believe? It was a little more that we believed the majority of the science community back then. And then we live, and I love that our country has a feeling about can-doism. We can do things. We can build the Panama Canal. We can be the first in flight. We can mass produce the automobile. We can build the Eisenhower Interstate Highway System. We can build the St. Lawrence Seaway, and we could go to the moon. It was part of our national DNA that being an American meant getting things that seemed unfathomable done. And Kennedy was nothing if not a student of history. He really was a historian, John F. Kennedy. We started gabbling as a journalist, but what inspired him in his life was reading history books. And as president, he had the imagination to realize this could be my presidency, the things I'd like to be remembered for beyond having to run the Cold War, behind the battle with the Soviet Union.
The other things on his plate at the time, yeah.
Yeah, Berlin Wall going up, or, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Obviously, presidents have crises, but Kennedy wanted to be remembered for ocean exploration and space exploration. And he chose those as his two special things. And there's a whole book that hasn't been written about in space. Kennedy and ocean exploration. I'm trying to do a little of that work right now in a book I'm writing called Silent Spring Revolution: John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and the long 60s environmental movement.
Oh, that's great. We get a teaser.
Yeah. I hope you come to the library when that happens.
There you go. To finish out this, speaking of books, was there any book that really you feel had an influence on your life, since we're talking about books and libraries?
When I was little, I got very enamored by all the Dr. Dolittle books of Hugh Lofting, not just the movie, but he had a series, the writer Lofting had a series of books that I just gobbled up. But then I went for things like Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn. I used to imagine the Maumee River as being that. I've had a little bit of a health scare recently, and it causes you to reflect on your life. And I wish I would have done more to clean the Maumee River. It just kills me that that childhood river is so dirty and polluted. And if I can get the energy later, I'll try to do something.
Oh, there's your next project.
Yeah, well, I believe a lot in keeping rivers and lakes clean. And I love Lake Erie, and I love the Maumee, and I want it to always be people able to do recreational activities on those bodies of waters and not turn them into, places of that become dead zones.
And it gives people a connection to the environment, and they really, feel a responsibility for it.
Yeah, I've been writing a little about Blue Mind, just getting out on Lake Erie, going out to Put-in Bay and getting the breeze and the water and being able to fish. It's just a way to really connect life. And I love Ohio, and anywhere you grow up, you're sensitive to. In that area, I just wish we can do more on the conservation front.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate you talking with us, and we're looking forward to sharing your book with as many people as we can. And have a great afternoon then.
All right, and I'll be back when the Cleveland Indians are back. I'll be back.
That sounds good. Thank you very much.